Folks, Resident Evil is still a hot topic, and you know me, I love Resident Evil and I love talking about it. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Toxic Boyo, and today we're going to be speculating as to what the next remake is going to be in the Devil May Cry franchise. Jesus Christ. I didn't even talk about Devil May Cry today. I don't know what my problem is. But we're going to be speculating about what the next remake is going to be in the Resident Evil franchise now that RE9 has, finally arrived and people are enjoying it. It's getting people talking about certain characters and certain things, so I don't know when this video is going to come out in relation to when RE9 came out, but there will be spoilers as to what happens in the story of that game, so you've been warned. If you're new here and you do like talking Resident Evil, there's going to be a lot of that in the future, so go down, leave a subscribe, let me know who your favorite Resident Evil protagonist is. Mine is Jill Valentine, I miss her. Now, I want to set things up a little bit by talking about Resident Evil 9, specifically the character Zeno and the concept of the Raccoon City syndrome, or the lingering T-virus infection that we see in characters like Sherry Birkin, who does make her return in this game, and Leon Kennedy, who's the co-protagonist of it. We're going to talk about Zeno first. Or I guess we should talk about the Raccoon City syndrome, because Zeno has it. So we find out in this game that people who have survived the T-virus outbreak of Raccoon City back in the late 90s are dying of an infection now. It's been slowly gestating in their system, mutating and becoming lethal over the decades. So Leon is afflicted with that. We see 5 people before him die with it. Sherry has it. That's kind of like what's motivating Leon's character, is he's trying to figure out, is there something that could be done about him having this disease? So he goes back to, try to sort all that out. But that raises the question of who else has it, because Leon was only in Resident Evil 2. I mean, yeah, he was only in Raccoon City for a couple hours. He was there for one night. So by that logic, we have to assume that anybody who spent any significant amount of time in Raccoon City during the stretch of the events of just before 1 through 3 is probably infected with that too. So that means Claire Redfield, Jill Valentine, Chris Redfield, Rebecca Chambers, Ada Wong, Albert Wesker. But Wesker's dead, so that part doesn't necessarily matter too much. But it's interesting to bring up because, they find a cure at the end of the game, and we have to assume that Leon's scraped up enough Elpis cure to hand it out to everybody. But the thing is, we know that Chris is still active. I don't see, and considering that Leon was infected with something else in Resident Evil 4 and cured of that in Resident Evil 4 and still has this, I can't make any assumptions regarding any character that was infected with and cured of anything else. Because, yeah, Claire got T-Phobos, other characters got other things, I can't remember. I think Ada got Las Plagas. If they were cured of something else, then they're probably still dealing with this Raccoon City syndrome. So, I think that they're trying to set the stage for certain characters making a return. But the thing is, they're probably operating in different parts of the world, so it's going to be difficult, I think, for Leon to get this cure to all of those people. But, they're going to deal with that when RE10 comes out. Another thing I want to talk about is Wesker. He has a clone in this game called Zeno. They never outright say he's a clone, but they do confirm that cloning exists, because they've been trying to clone Grace into something that they can get the memories of Grace out of, so that they can figure out how to access Elpis. So we know that the cloning is a thing. And then we see this guy who kind of looks like Wesker. He's got these glowing eyes, he wears these sunglasses, he's got the blonde slicked back hair, and he dodges bullets, just like Wesker. So it's pretty obvious that Zeno is a clone of Wesker, but the important thing to point out is that he also has Raccoon City syndrome. So cloning doesn't even get around it, you know what I mean? So if Wesker were still alive somewhere out there, he'd still have it. Now, I say that to set up a couple different possibilities when it comes to remakes, because they're trying to ignite interest in certain characters again, or they're trying to gauge what interest does still exist. And Resident Evil is honestly kind of an interesting franchise, because it's really the only one that we can have these kinds of conversations about. Any other franchise, we're looking at, oh man, what remake comes next? Where do we go as far as remaking old games of the franchise? it would read as creatively bankrupt, but not Resident Evil. We've kind of come to agree that, like, this is the franchise where you get away with it, and there's 3 big games that can come next. Pardon the interruption, it's your boy Toxic Boyo, and I wanted to take a brief moment to let you know about the Toxic Touch Productions Patreon. I'm not currently monetized on YouTube, but I still want to bring you the best content that I possibly can. I want to make those videos that you love, and I want them to be the best that they can be. But I need a little help. That's where you guys come in. If you want to support me directly, you can head on over to patreon.com/ToxicTouchProductions or click the link in the description or the pinned comment. For even just $5 a month, you can get your name included in the credits at the end of the video, gain access to exclusive channels on the Discord, and you get specialized merch at no extra cost. It only gets better as the tiers go higher. Go check it out. Thanks for listening and thanks for supporting my dreams. Now let's get back to the video. We have Resident Evil 5, because, I mean, if we're going chronologically, that's the next big one that needs to be remade. And they kind of set that up at the end of the RE4 remake by introducing Wesker back into the plot and saying that Ada was working for him. I don't recall Wesker being a part of Resident Evil 4 at all in the original timeline. Another thing that's kind of coming with the remakes is that if you play RE9, then you'll know that, like, the flashbacks that we see regarding Leon in Raccoon City are from the updated timeline in the remakes. So it seems like the point of remaking these games is not only to bring a new audience and to, you know, grow the fan base, but also to consolidate things into a central timeline and kind of rework the canon into a new version of the story that is the definitive one that they want to go for. So obviously, you're going to have to get around to 5 and 6 eventually, and that's going to just lead us into the way that things are in 7, 8, and 9, and that's going to be how that goes. Now, there's a lot of conversations being had about Resident Evil 5 that have been going on for the last couple of years regarding, like, oh, the game is racist and it's aged poorly and yada yada yada. I think that to say that Resident Evil 5 is racist just because you're in Africa and obviously you're killing African zombies, I think you then have to call Resident Evil 4 racist for the same reason. You're in Spain shooting Spanish zombies. Or, considering the fact that this game is not made in America, you could say the same thing about the original trilogy. You know, I don't think that the game is made with malicious intent. I don't think, like, there's a lot of overtly racist characterization of black people in Japanese media that I've seen. Sergeant Black from Dragon Ball comes to mind, and so does Lackluster from One Punch Man. I don't think that this is that. I think this is them just doing their globetrotting thing, because, I mean, Resident Evil 6 goes to China, and yeah, Japan and China have a tumultuous relationship as well, but, like, I think that the point of Resident Evil is just for it to be this globetrotting franchise where you go to different countries and you fight different types of zombies. I don't think that them including Africa is meant for them to be racist or to be offensive towards black people or African people in any way. I think they just wanted to go to another continent that they hadn't been to before. That's it. That's all it comes down to. It feels more like it's kind of done out of a place of ignorance rather than malice. So I don't have very strong feelings about it. I think it's okay. I obviously don't speak for Africans because I'm not an African, but I don't think that calling Resident Evil 5 too racist to remake is going to do anybody any good. I'm not here to do a video essay about whether or not it is racist or about, you know, why it's okay or why it's defensible. None of that is the purpose of what we're talking about today. We're just trying to figure out where they go next and what that means, what it looks like. Now, another big thing about Resident Evil 5 is the co-op aspect of it. The co-op kind of carries the game. And it's kind of gotten to a point where, like, most people that defend the game defend it because of co-op. I've seen people say that if you don't like Resident Evil 5, it's because you don't have friends. If I'm being 100% honest with you, I did not finish Resident Evil 5 because the person that I was playing it with moved away, so I never got all the way through the game because I just didn't want to finish it on my own. My opinion on Resident Evil 5, having played it co-op, I was having a great time. I was legitimately really enjoying that game. I was playing as Sheva. That's fair. But, like, I was having a great time playing it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was super entertaining. I can imagine, though, that as a franchise where every game has pretty much been a single-player experience, dropping this game that's so heavily dependent on co-op kind of feels like you get system shock. I understand that. So I think that in remaking Resident Evil 5, you can do something to elevate the single-player aspect of the game to where it's equally fun to play by yourself or with a friend. And yeah, we're lucky that you can still play Resident Evil 5 online. That's great. Being able to play that game co-op is, what makes it so enjoyable. But I think that in a remake, you get the opportunity to do something about that and make that single-player experience a little bit more fun. You can make Sheva's AI respond a little bit better. Or you can have it to where you can play as Sheva and then Chris is the AI. But your companion character needs to be useful. That's something that The Last of Us does have over Resident Evil, is that your AI companion character is actually doing things and helping out in the fight, actually clearing out enemies to make the encounter a little bit easier. I think that would go a long way. Now, one of the reasons that I think, like I said, that having Xeno in Resident Evil 9, I think they're trying to soft launch the concept of bringing Wesker back as a character to see what the general interest is, so they used a decoy of him. I think that they're doing that to try to gauge if there's any popular interest in the character coming back in the franchise, and I think that what they would want to do is probably have him survive the events of Resident Evil 5 somehow, some way, at a post-credit scene where it shows that he's still out there, because Chris and Wesker, their back and forth, their beef kind of defines Resident Evil for a long time. Like, for that first decade of the franchise, that's what it is. They fight each other in 3 different games. Speaking of those 3 different games, the next game that I think is likely when it comes to remakes is Code Veronica. Now, it's obviously less likely than 5, and I was wishing that they would do it before they got to Resident Evil 4 because it came out before 4 did. But the thing is, a lot of people are begging to see more Claire. I think that Capcom sees that. I think that they're smart enough to recognize it. Now, I don't particularly have a very close relationship with Code Veronica, but I think that considering that the main appeal of Resident Evil Death Island was having the core 4 finally together, having Leon, Chris, Claire, Jill all together for the very first time, that's a big deal. It shows you that there's still a lot of interest in these legacy characters. You can do your new protagonists, people love Grace Ashcroft, people love Ethan Winters, but that doesn't mean that we have to sideline people like Chris, Jill, Claire, and Leon. And they're learning that, I think. So, remaking the only other game that really centers on Claire, at least in the mainline franchise, obviously Revelations is about Claire, but how many people have really played that one? So Veronica, being a Dreamcast game, kind of got second life on the PS2. And I think that, for the sake of, again, gauging interest in Wesker, you're going to want to do that game. I don't remember the secondary character that Claire is there with, but people love Chris. You're going to want more Chris. Do Code Veronica. It's really just the reason that you would remake that game, it doesn't even necessarily have to do with its impact on the main story, because you can play Resident Evil 1 and then 5 and not have played Code Veronica and understand why Chris and Wesker don't like each other. But I do think that it helps. You can give a little bit more, substance to the rivalry between Chris and Wesker. You can give Claire some time in the spotlight again, give her more to do. I just think that it's a good idea to go in that direction. I don't have as much to say about it as I do about 5, but I do have a little bit more to say about this next one. Now, the least fortunate and still most talked about route that they could go with the next remake is another remake of Resident Evil 1. I know, why would you remake a game that's already got a remake that's available on PC and modern consoles, and is considered to be one of the best games in your franchise, and one of the best remakes of any game of all time? Well, it's still got tank controls and pre-rendered backgrounds. I love that. I'm not here to say that tank controls and pre-rendered backgrounds or any of that stuff that makes the original Resident Evil games what they are is bad. I'm not here to say that those games are outdated or that they're too clunky to play in modern days. I can easily go back from just having finished my Insanity run on Resident Evil 9 to playing the RE1 remake right now with no problem whatsoever. However, not everybody is like that. I think that we're kind of in an era where we're catering to the new generation of Resident Evil fans, you know? That over-the-shoulder thing that they did for the RE2 make, that was done to make it more in line with Resident Evil 4. I get that. Same thing with 3, and then the 4 remake is kind of, you know, built upon what was already there, but in such a way that it doesn't make the original game obsolete. I think people can easily either prefer the original or the remake. They can go back and forth between those games with relative ease. Yes, Resident Evil 4 does still have tank controls. 5 was the first, you know, mainline game to get rid of that. But you kind of get what I'm trying to say, right? Like, if we're going to be remaking any more Resident Evil games, we're going to be doing it in the style that we've done 2, 3, and 4 so far. So, I think that they're going to want to do 1 again, just to have that more, you know, concise and consistent DNA from one game to the next. They want to be able to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 all together, and you look at it and it makes sense to you. It's like, yep, I can see how all of these games connect to each other. I understand that it's all part of the same thing. This new updated timeline that they're doing, where they're, you know, reworking the lore a little bit. You know, obviously they would probably be bringing back Lisa Trevor. Maybe they'll expand on her and those Spencer / Umbrella experimentations a little bit more. My main concern with doing a Resident Evil 1 remake is the characters. You know, we haven't really interacted with too many of the stars in these remakes. You know, Chris hasn't been there. Brad kind of just dies at the beginning of RE3. We haven't encountered Barry or Wesker. We haven't seen Rebecca. So, like, oh, I guess you could do a Resident Evil 0 remake, but I don't even think that's on the table, if we're being completely honest. I don't know how much appeal there is for Rebecca Chambers as a character, but, you know, like I was saying, Jill is the only star that, well, the only stars member that we've spent significant time with in these remakes, and they made some changes to her character. They reworked her in some ways that I don't particularly love. You know, I won't ever lie and say that RE3 make Jill is my favorite Jill. You know, I understand updating her for modern audiences, but I don't know. I feel like they go too far in the direction of trying to keep her from being a damsel in distress, and they just kind of make her bullish and too. She just doesn't seem pleasant to be around, and it's not just because she's a woman that I'm saying this. They made her act very similarly to, or rather, they made Chris act very similarly to her in Resident Evil 8, and I didn't like Chris in that game either. I thought he was acting really strange and out of character, to the point that I thought Miranda was pretending to be Chris. That's what I thought the big reveal was going to be, especially because the box art of the game has Chris and a werewolf, and it's like, oh, the wolf within type thing. Like, I don't know, I thought something was going to be going on with Chris in that game, and it just doesn't happen that way. It's really, really weird marketing, especially because the game's not even about Chris. I think that if you consider Jill's old personality to be a little too placid, I can completely understand that, especially in that first game. If you want to update her, I get that. They updated Claire's, like, they updated Claire as a character as well. Not even just her wardrobe, but again, her personality, the way that she interacts with other characters. They did still do that thing that Resident Evil likes to do, where the female characters kind of just start adopting kids. I don't really have too much to say about that. I'm not a woman. If that's a problem for female Resident Evil fans, let me know. I'd actually like to engage in a conversation about that, because maybe I'll learn a thing or two. But updating Jill's character is absolutely possible without turning her into a character that nobody wants to interact with. Have her still be snarky. I don't know. I don't know. It's tough. Obviously, they're going to want to remake that game at a certain point, but I think that maybe the new Jill is what's holding them up. I think that it's interesting to look at least. One of these 3 games is getting remade next. If you made it this far in the video, let me know which of the 3 games you think is going to get remade next, or what do you hope gets remade that I didn't talk about. You can count 0 because I didn't spend a whole lot of time talking about it. Whatever it is, whatever you think, comment below and educate me. And as always, if you want more videos from me, go ahead and click somewhere on the screen. There's going to be 2 more for you. I'll see you later.